second interview, where we're interviewing Dave Arnett. And we'll have the same procedure kind of like we did last time. If you would give just an opening statement, background, all that work experience, and then we'll have at least one round of questions, beginning with Lewis for Ward 1 and just go all the way around. And after that, we'll probably just have more of a freewheeling type discussion.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you would just go ahead and introduce yourself to us again, even though we all know you, and just give that background.
Obviously, Dave Arnett, from Bell City, Alabama originally. Graduated Bell City High School. At the age of 17, went into the United States Navy as a aviation maintenance administration. So very long word for push paper for aircraft. We kept up with all the logs, did all the office work, evaluations, pretty much anything that any of the squadrons or intermediate level maintenance needed. From there, got my Class A CDL, drove cross country for probably a year or better. Decided that was enough time away from my family that did a little temp work in there, used my Class A CDL, drove a street sweeper downtown Chicago for 9 months-ish. Decided we could not afford to live in Chicago anymore, moved back to Bell City, Alabama, where obviously cost of living was cheaper. At that point, had a couple of directions to go. To go to work for Roto-Rooter as a plumber apprentice. Stayed there for about 2 years, more or less. Got my master plumbing card, my master gas card. At that point, found an opening in the city of Bell City for a heavy equipment operator. For about a year and 9 months, I operated heavy equipment in the utility department. That's digging up water lines, gas lines, roads, anything that utility department would need. Filling potholes, general labor, anything they needed, we did. From there, actually my father ran into a guy that was starting a residential plumbing company. Went and started that with his friend, Gary Corley, for probably about 2 years or so. Ran his residential plumbing division. We built it from nothing to running about 6 trucks through the Birmingham area. At that point, the building inspector job in the city of Vestavia opened up, applied, and through a series of events, actually got the job. I was actually very, very shocked when I did. Stayed there for 9.5 years, where I got my Master Code Professional, 30-ish or so certifications through the ICC. I am lead AP Construction Design and Building certified. I got my CAPSO there, which is your zoning official. I actually got my 2-year degree while I was in Vestavia. That was general studies. I was going for business, but I could finish up general studies and start my 4-year quicker, so kind of made that choice. While with the city of Vestavia, I started their compliance department, which is what Ms. Hannah does here. Trust me, I didn't hold a candle to what she does. Ended up writing the property maintenance ordinance for that city. It's obviously a city like Vestavia is a lot different as far as the enforcement and actual issues that we would have here in Anniston. At that point, the building official in Trussville retired. Applied for that position and got that position where we were running 4 inspectors. At that time, there was an engineer, but he was not an engineer department head. So I ended up taking over the engineering department, the building code department, the zoning, and the planning all at one little time. At that point, I was a liaison to 7 voluntary boards and authorities, consisting of zoning, planning, the downtown redevelopment So did that for 5 years, 4 years. The last year, I transferred over to the actual IT department, and I ran the IT department for about a year. There's only so long you can take building officially, and before it turns into a stress. So it's a strain. At that point, this position came open for the public works director. It's something I clearly have a lot of experience in, both technically, professionally. All my certifications and such are kind of wound around that field. So came in, interviewed, and luckily Mr. Folks gave me the opportunity, and that hopefully brings us up to date.
Here we are. All right, let's start with you again, and then if there are any follow-up questions, we'll take care of those, and we'll move on to Dee's here.
Mr. Arnett, you talked about reducing budgetary expenditures here in Anniston by negotiating and canceling unneeded contracts. As that relates to prioritizing city funding, how would you prioritize city funding in that regard? And then how might you identify other sources of revenue for the city?
Okay. Starting with reducing budgetary
Or
concerns.
prioritizing financial.
When I got here, we contracted with the engineering firm CDG. Everybody remembers Lance. At that point, our budgetary requirement for the engineering department was around $240,000, give or take, and that didn't even include all of his extras. So at one time, we were paying that company to have an engineer in the seat, 8 hours a day, close to $300,000 a year. As we got deeper into the invoices and deeper into actual production, we found out we didn't need a professional engineer. He was simply doing the job of an engineering aide. Everything that was of an actual professional engineer was going back to his firm, and then we were paying for that privilege, part of his contract. After Iron Mountain Road was completed, because his company was the lead on that particular project, we moved on to a reduced schedule. And that reduced schedule went from 3 days a week to no days a week in about 3 weeks. Brandon Cole has since taken that position, and we reduced our budgetary requirement from around $300,000 to $147,000 for this year. And that's complete salary, benefits, conferences, all of that. So I think that's where these type things begin. You look at your biggest expense, you go through the record, you work your way down. Is there someone else that can take over this position? Is this position even required at this level? I'm not really a very good example of that. We spent a excessive amount of money on that particular project, and there were things that we could have reduced the scope of work, but we were allowing a company to come in and make those decisions for us. We weren't allowed to go, not allowed, but we did not take that opportunity to go in and check those type things. So that's kind of one of those things. We did the same thing in Trustful. When I got to Trustful, the income for the building department was around $250,000, $300,000 a year. Got into the ordinance, found out how little we were charging for permits, how little we were charging fees of all nature. When I left there, we were generating about $1.5 million for that department. So I think that's one of the very important things, getting in and figuring out how to reduce that cost. Going into prioritizing, it's really where the council is leading us, what y'all see as a priority at the time. I Main Street, Tana, we all do these things almost as a second nature. And all of them do a very good job at it. Now, once we get to these bigger grants, such as Iron Mountain Road, Noble from 8th down to Front Street, some of your NPO grants, those are things that we actually have a consulting firm for. I took grants in my master course. I've written a grant. I've gotten a grant. I'm not great at grant writing. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not my thing. They're very, very niche kind of things. They're looking for certain words, certain phrases, and that's what we have consultants for. I look at the back end of that grant process. Usually there's a match. Have we budgeted for that? Is there an in-kind service? Is there a responsibility of the city beyond that grant? In our AIP grants, our airport grants, we have grant assurances from the federal government that these 19 items must be met, or we have to pay that grant back. I think looking for an alternate source of money versus actually applying that alternate source of money is different. The looking for it's the easy part we pay someone. It's that back end part, getting the finance department, getting public works or park and rec or compliance or whoever is that actual entity using it to make sure that we get those steps beyond.
Any follow-ups?
I'm really glad to hear you say that, because so many people say, we just need to get grants. They don't really think about administering the grant. That's where the work is. And so I'm glad to hear you say that that's critical. I mean, in my interpretation, what you're saying is that it's critical, that you follow through and administer and execute. And then you have to have your data to report back as to whether or not the grant is successful, you know.
Exactly, and some of these are reimbursable grants, as y'all know, and we have to make sure our finance department has that upfront money. We know the state, that payback on the state can take a month, 2 months, and that's just that lag time that we need to make sure we're coordinating.
Any other follow-up? All right, let's go to you, Lee.
Start at thank you for your service. My question to you is, working, being a department head in the city, what would you, what would you desire to become a city manager?
Very good question. I've worked a lot of places. Not too many, but I've worked a lot of places. I've never worked with a group of people this dynamic, this fun, this interesting, this educated, this just a team mentality all throughout the city. Starting in public works, I have the best employees in the city. I'll be glad to argue with any department head that wants to argue. My employees are the best. We take great care in making sure they're taken care of. We understand that this is a blue-collar job, it's paid blue-collar wage. We do our best to make sure they're taken care of in every other way we can. We can't just issue raises ad hoc. Obviously, we can't just give them more money. We do our best to take care of them in other ways. Other ways that I and my supervisors take care of them. We try to provide, lunch once a month. We try to make sure that their families are taken care of at Christmas time. And we're just really kind of that, it's not a family because you don't choose your family, but we do our best to make sure everybody feels comfortable in the moment. What makes me want to be city manager is first, this is what I've trained for. This is my education. This is what I've spent 20 years doing, is learning how to run cities, writing ordinances, researching, doing everything I can to reach this point. But also look at the city that we live in. Look at the employees, look at the citizens. Why would you not Look at what we've done in the past 5 years. Bill and I, while we were touring the city hall, we went up to the roof. You look up and down Noble, and in the last 5 years, you can see nothing but change down that road. Every bit of it is changed, it's built up. Our main street has gone out, they've created parks, they're putting out speakers, they're bringing this home feeling to Noble Street. I think that's very important. I think everybody here would agree that that's very important. You look up north at the McClellan development. Anybody ever think we'd have a Starbucks here? No? This is the most exciting time to be any part of the city. But running the city would be, why would you want it?
All right. So, switch gears, well, staying in the same place, but how often that's, you know, in other ventures. So, why would you not be this candidate for the job?
Well, I have a lot of faults. I'm not the best at everything. I can be hard-headed sometimes, just like anybody else. But I guess that's for other people to decide better than me. But I feel like I'm your best rounded candidate. I feel like sitting in this seat, someone who has gone from digging the hole to managing the hole, it's a whole different level. Somebody who's driven the equipment, operated the equipment, knows how the equipment works. Somebody that's gone through the purchasing process, what's best for this and what's best for that. I just feel like I'm your best rounded candidate. Now, of course, that's not my decision, but it's where I stand.
So, if you had to, I guess I'm good.
No, go ahead.
So if we had to pick, you're in the city of Anniston, what would you consider your greatest moment? Your greatest day in the sun?
I'm gonna be on the spot with Scott here. When Scott and I could look and we got over the home of that airport settlement, I think, ask him later, but that was one of my biggest, when Mr. Folks hired me, he gave me 2 jobs. Cut out overtime as much as humanly possible and fix the airport. I have not fixed the airport, we're still getting there. But my God, we have gone so far. I've never run an airport getting this job. It took me a little to get up to speed. To get to where we are today, that's my airport. That's mine. Scott rents it, but it's mine.
Any other follow-up there from anyone?
I would, while you're talking about the airport, I would just, like I said, put you on the spot further and ask you how you see it being an asset to the city.
Oh, so many ways. We have so much untouched potential. I was at the conference last week, the SEC FAA conference, which is the Southeast. All our FAA folks are there, the state's there, and the entire Southeast region of airports is there. Birmingham, Atlanta, all of your major, and all of your little guys, Knoxville, St. Petersburg, all of your smaller airports. We ended up getting an entire conference with our entire ADO staff. About 10 people sitting at a conference table with the state. The state wanted to join. They didn't have to join. They wanted to join. they're excited about where we're going with this master plan. Our buy-in with the munitions department, the new the fire training facility, what we're doing with that. These are all things that are very exciting, not only to us, but to the FAA, to the state, and to the region, because like we all know, the fire training center is not only a regional, but it's the head ADO, Rand Black. He's done 3 training centers in 30 years. 3. The last one was Lexington, Kentucky, and they actually paid for the training center. That's how much need there is. So for us to go through and kudos to the fire chief to go through and find that money to provide something that the FAA has already paid for, but to add another dynamic down at our airport. It's finally a path we can look to. We're never going to be Birmingham. We're never going to be Atlanta. And we're never going to have a Southwest or anything else like that. There's just no point. There's no logical point to do that. So for us to have a path into this training sector, it's very exciting to all partners, honestly. So that's what I see. And that's what I get excited about, is that we are sitting on such promise. You get the training center, you have the option of food, depending on the need. We have the option, and we have 600 acres. 600 acres. The munitions, they're begging to be partners. We're looking at DOD. These are things that we've never played with. Very exciting.
Any follow-up there? All right, Sarah?
David, you mentioned Fort McClellan, that essentially being an asset for the city. You are fully aware of all the changes that are going on with the MDA, potentially assets being moved on to the city. So I kind of have a 3-part question, and I can reiterate those questions too. For David, is that understand? The first question is, what is your vision for Fort McClellan? Number 2 would be, how would you leverage state and federal funds to enhance infrastructure, particularly in that area? And then number 3, how would you manage staffing issues as it pertains to Fort McClellan?
So vision for Fort McClellan.
It could be industries, whatever the case may be.
So I think industry would be such a capable, because that's what's already out there, right? We got that, and the transportation department for the county. Do we want industrial development? Is that all that property is for, is industrial development? We have horse trails, we have lakes, we have recreation out there. Recreation doesn't always bring revenue up. So where does it go from there? Starships were just purchased. Looking at possibly a production company, depending on how that takes off, right? Is that something we could build around? That's something we could get partner business, companion business out there to support that function. You have to have lighting, you have to have directing, you have to have set builds, you have to have all of these things. Is that the way to go? I have no idea if it doesn't exist yet, but I think you have to have the seed to grow around. And the only seed you have right now is industrial development. I don't know that property needs to be fully industrial, but that may be where it goes. I mean, that may be the only avenues we continue to get shut. Most of them don't have the structural stability to actually be developed. They would have to be ripped up and redone, and that's something that, again, is a 772, and then if we had some sort of company that we believed in and we thought would grow that particular area, that's something that we could look at as far as that infrastructure goes. We're not taking on so much as far as current use, grass cutting, maintenance, that type of stuff. We're looking at the equipment more so than the manpower. We already do that. We're just adding a little to it. It's not insurmountable at the staffing level we have. The farther we go, of course, you would like a little more staff just to ease that pain, but in the short run, it's not really a big deal for us to absorb that. Especially, I think there's 2 or 4 that are already working out there that will have some sort of option coming to see us. So
you're referring to staffing particularly with Public Works?
Public Works, Park and Rec, all of the city facilities out there are already staffed. I think the ones that aren't, Horse Trail, Yahoo Lake, they just, and then there's a couple of other things that are out there that aren't consequential to that staffing need, from my understanding. What little understanding I have.
Would you think it would be necessary to create a Fort McClellan department?
No.
Why?
Because we don't have any other full-time department to run sections of the city. As far as economic development, we have an economic development director. That's part of the job. We don't need someone else running that particular part of the city. We don't need another division. I thought that's what we were trying to get out of. We assimilate it into the city and it becomes the city. There's no distinction other than, like Main Street has a distinction, McClellan will have a distinction.
Thank you. I have another question. You're familiar with CDBG home funds. I know Public Works does utilize some of those funds. So how would you prioritize CDBG and home funds, and what methods would you use to ensure that we can make the greatest impact with those funds?
First of all, I advise the council. Y'all know where the need is more than I do. My every day is going out, looking at the potholes, looking at the work orders, and trying to make sure that the citizens' complaints to us are fixed. Y'all are hearing from your constituents, your leaders in the community, of what actually needs to be redeveloped or renewed in some way. Obviously, we have boundaries for CDBG. We have certain things we can and can't do. And just recently, in the past year or so, we've discovered better ways to use that money. With Ms. Woods and our consultant, we've really dug a little deeper to figure out what use can come from those monies. In my personal world, I think all those funds should complement each other, like the Satcher Plan. That was something that we had some funds go in, but the infrastructure has to work with all the rest of the CDBG funds. They're not separate. Too long we've looked at a road versus a park. Why could we not look at the road in front of the park, the sidewalk in front of the park, and make one development if needed? So I think we've missed opportunities to partner that money together. That's David.
Thank you. One last question.
So you mentioned about CDBG, where you're looking, that, and you're depending on the council. Well, sometimes the council get it, or at least I do, get it, well, why I want to see the city manager, or if I get an answer that's not
department head, whether it's the city manager, whatever you feel at that time best serves your town hall. That's the way we get into the community. You have civic organizations, you have all these other things, but until you sit down in a town hall with people that choose to be there, that choose to bring up issues, you're not going to get that feedback. You walk through Walmart all day and listen to them, hey, he's got a stoplight out over here. Well, we handle that with work orders and we're fairly efficient at it. When we're talking about CDBG funds, and we're talking about redevelopment, and we're talking about infrastructure, I think when you're having that town hall and you have your citizens together in one room, that's when you start getting that feedback and the people feed off each other's comments. And, I know we're looking at Hannah currently. That's what I've been hearing about for 5 years. Driven on it for 5 years, and it needs to be redone. Maybe that could have been done sooner, had we prioritized things at that point. So, I think it starts with us being together when we have these community involvement. Being seen together, being seen as a group.
That actually led to another question. How do you, this is not the question I was gonna ask. I promise after my two questions I'm gonna stop.
You're good.
How will you ensure that there is adequate communication between yourself, if chosen for this position, and the city council? Meaning, we are getting the necessary information that we need in order to make sound decisions outside of our own research and our own duties as elected officials. How will you ensure that that communication is fair, adequate, and just between the two?
I think that's up to each council. I think the information you would require and you would want might be different from Mr. Downey. I may be giving him information, and he's just looking at it going, I don't want to know anything about this. So I think the first part is sitting down with each one of you and seeing what you actually want. And then developing that strategy from there. I know Ms. Harris came in Tuesdays at 2 o'clock. Ask any question you want. That was her way of getting the information she wanted. When Dee has a day off, Mr. Roberts, excuse me, let's go for a ride around. We get in the truck and we go ride around. That's how we have relayed information in the past. So I think it just depends on how, again, to each counselor is going to be different. Now, if the council as a whole says every council meeting we want the current budget, any amendments, then that will be made for you. And any explanation thereafter, all you have to do is pick up the phone. But you'll have the answer.
Thank you.
I got nothing to hide.
Last question.
Yes.
Name at least 2 obstacles the city faces in developing West Anniston.
Currently, just going off what I've had to do as the public works director, there is a certain amount of homeless damage. We're just walking around and they're damaging things for their own. The bus stop on 15th Street. We actually had to take a cone out of there because somebody was taking it back to it and waking up half the neighborhood because they were beating this cone. I think that's very hard to convince a business owner, hey, come open a business, right? It's a bad look. But going beyond looks, you have optics, but then you have rumors, right? Everybody on Facebook, West Anniston. I mean, that's where you go to die, right? All over Facebook. Every time something happens, before it ever starts. Trying to convince somebody that it doesn't exist when it's all, how many years has this been going on? You turn on Facebook and it's just, it's this, it's this, this is good. I think perception is probably worse than reality. So the problem isn't necessarily a realized problem, perception. I think we've done better in the past 3 years as far as getting trash up and getting that word out. So I think if you'd asked me 4 years ago, I would have said you ride through and it looks like a dump. But I think we've done better with the community. I think we've done better with the public works department. We've done better cleaning up that side where the actual appearance actually meets some of the citizens. I mean, the citizens deserve a clean place too. And I think we know that not all of that comes from the citizens of Anniston. Citizens of Anniston don't have that many mattresses. There's no way that we can have that many mattresses within the population of our city. There are other people coming and using us as a dump. I think we're doing a better job there. So, one, I think is actual, the homelessness there that I think we're doing a better job at Thatcher Clinic and Martha's Hope and this type of stuff. But I think, again, going beyond that, it's a perception.
Thank you.
Any follow-up?
Mr. Arnett, first I want to thank you for always being responsive. Whenever I need some help with something, I think I interact with you more than any other department. And you've always answered any question and been very, very efficient at solving any kind of problems that I presented to you. So I want to thank you, along with our Councilor Roberts, for your service. You alluded to some of your interactions with employees, but I would like to know what methods have you used to collaborate with the staff and ensure that you're tapping into their abilities. You have a lot of employees who work for you,
Yes, ma'am.
but how do you collaborate with these employees? Or do you have a method for collaborating with them?
I don't think I have a set method, no ma'am. We set several meetings throughout the month as far as getting our supervisors together. And we have one projects meeting a month, we have one budget meeting a month. Ms. Avaki has set up, she calls it a huddle every Monday at 8 o'clock, so we can sit down with all of our supervisors and kind of figure out what's laid out for the week and what we can do to help from there. As far as our regular full-time employees, just going down to the armory and sitting there watching them come in every morning and just chat and see how their life is. It's not a method so much as it's just hey, let's see how everybody's going today. And that's, sometimes I don't have time to do it every week. Sometimes I can do it a couple of times a week. It just depends on what we're doing. The last few weeks we've been moving, so I haven't had a chance. They've actually been coming to City Hall, so we've been able to communicate from there. But no ma'am, I have no set method.
Could you define your leadership style? Do you have a particular style that you would be able to define or want to define?
It's a great question, obviously, but I think a lot of times people try to define themselves by one style, and I think every leadership course you go through, and through my education and through all my certifications, I've been through a zillion of them. Generally, there's 6 to 10 leadership styles, right? I think Harvard Leadership School gives you 6. I don't think any of us here that have ever been in a leadership position is one. move to City Hall. Would have been great if we could have used more coaching style leadership. Let's see if we can get this going. Hey, you know, grab this way. It really wasn't that time. You had to take more of an authoritarian leadership role on that. We need to get this, or this, do this. There wasn't a lot of democracy in that particular moment. So no ma'am, I don't think I'll ever be defined as one style. I will change for each person, I will change for each situation, and I think that's what makes me strong. Is I don't think you can always adhere to one thing. If you do, you're going to mess up.
We encounter a lot of politically sensitive issues with the staff, the council, and the public. And sometimes we know the problem is people don't always know the whole story. They make assumptions based on a small amount of information. But how would you handle politically sensitive issues with the staff, the public, with the council? How would you handle those issues?
We're talking about information that cannot be shared, that you only have pieces of. You know, obviously the best medicine is no comment. I'm sorry, we can't comment on that due to legal reasons or NDAs or whatnot. Or you use the tools you have on hand. We have our public information officer that is very, very good at figuring out how to say things without saying things. Why would you not use that? I mean, you have a person there that's sole job is to do that. And sometimes his wordsmithing is way better than mine. So I lean on people that know what they're doing.
How do you do that internally? I mean, without needing a public information officer, without, in regards to, the culture that you'll develop at City Hall as a leader of that tremendous number of employees. Coming from a small business background, one of my focuses is always taking care of my people, making sure my people have what they want, what they deserve, what they need.
Yes.
So how do you go about managing that type of information internally? And also, I mean, not just that type of information, but that type of potential conflict or resolution or.
I think it's all starts at the department head level. I know that I have a conflict or a problem in my department. My entire job is to make sure that it gets Mr. Folks' office. Because once it gets there, it looks like I can't do my job. So I depend on my supervisors to do the same thing. If it is a conflict or an issue that rises to my level, well, we've really done something at this point. We're far into discipline, far before write-up, right? As far as information getting out, like the smart phone. Couldn't tell anybody that for how long. Everybody's asking, are we doing this? Are we doing that? Sorry guys, I'd love to tell you. But I don't know. Simple as that, I didn't actually have the information out. Even when I have the information, if they're not supposed to know, they're just not supposed to know. And, I mean, I certainly can look at them and tell them, I'm sorry, that's something we can't discuss now. Honesty before everything. Comments for that?
No further questions, but thank you so much.
In your opinion, what is the single most pressing issue facing the city right now?
I don't want to say the airport, but that's like 3 or 4. to our downtown program. It's the thing I hear over and over and over again. And I think there's a way to fix it.
I would love for you to elaborate.
Which,
So, which part of the way to fix it?
specifically fire suppression in downtown.
I have a water background and a utility background. I know where a meter goes, I know how to put in a standpipe, and I know where a street curb cut is. These are all very easy things to do. I've spoken with Mr. Turner on side conversations, and I think we have a couple of things worked out. Things that we have discussed again offline as far as different ways to purchase things, different ways to get them in the ground, whether that's a joint or whether the city just comes in and gets them and puts them in the ground. We've done some out of the box thinking, stuff that then I talked to the fire marshal about, and I mean, he's on board with most of it. Not all of it, but really it's about getting the water to them. That's the problem. That's a problem we can solve. So,
To that question, so, it's my understanding that the building is mostly built down and not up to code, and we need the sprinkler systems.
correct.
That's what a lot of potential business owners, as we say, this away.
Correct.
Buy the building and then the sprinkler system will cost pretty much, you may work on it, on the building. So what you're saying is, you feel that's a problem the city could have corrected?
I think it's a problem we can correct. I think with the right partnership with the water department.
But then what cost to the city? You know, I guess my question, I guess is, what come with it, because of, that's something we can do part of it. How would that in return be repaid to the property owners? Because they would have to ask us to do the game.
You know, Mr. Roberts, we can discuss that. It's some things that we would need to discuss before we went further. Because there would be some issues, either regarding 772 amendments or regarding capital expenditures in the next budget and how we would go by that. Would it be a block by block basis? Would it be a building by building basis? These are all vault issues. And how we go to manage one vault or four vaults. It's something that's going to take a little bit of decision on ownership. How does this work going forward? But again, we're knocking on the door, coming up with a very decent plan.
Any other thoughts?
So I've got some experience with this, in my, participation with Downtown Development Authority. The city, when we kind of reformed, the city, said, what we want y'all to look at is, and create an avenue for its loft living downtown. And we
maybe that's not an owner's responsibility, they're not responsible for paving that, are not responsible for paving Noble Street. Maybe changing the paradigm to where this is an infrastructure issue, not an owner issue.
Well, even still as it may, how do you address, telling the property owner, you can't do what we want you to do and what you may want to do because of the cost prohibitive nature of the fire suppression system. Spend half the market value of your building installing this fire suppression system so that you can rent your upstairs out, or so that you can create an Airbnb space upstairs, or so that you can create a second story business of some kind,
Sure.
and expect a return on investment. What's the city's role there?
The city's role, I think, is to prepare the infrastructure for any building improvement. That requirement is to protect the safety of the occupant. It's the building code that's been there since it changed from the Southern Building Code in 1999 to the International Building Code in 2000. That International Building Code now encompasses the international community. So a lot of this has grown from a regional issue to obviously a larger issue. But again, I think that there's out of the box thinking that goes further. Now, I'm sorry, the property value of Noble Street is the property value of Noble Street. How do you raise the property value? You get business in there and you start making Noble Street a destination for businesses. It's the only way you get property value to go up, right? You get a neighborhood to start increasing the house next to you, your property value goes up. You can't continue the status and not have that. So I think we as the city do what we can for the building. There's some things that we may have to, again, have some inventive thinking, whether that is the downtown development board, having a little more funding to give grants, whether it's again some 772 amendments. It's just, you have to start somewhere and move forward. But we have to start.
Any follow-up there or any additional questions from council members? David, you got any questions of us?
I think we're pretty straight.
Very good. Would you like to give a brief closing statement? It's not necessary, but if you'd like to, please do so.
I personally would just like to thank the council for inviting me. I've worked really hard to get here. For the last 5 years, I think I have shown effective leadership. I've shown the ability to do pretty much everything. So I appreciate y'all for recognizing that and at least giving me the opportunity. Where we go from here is with y'all, and I just appreciate it.
Very good. And with respect to this, we should be back there